p.m. We do have a change to the agenda, moving the presentation from number 4 to number 5, and we will be adding in at number 4 a change order number 2 for, is it 19-01? Okay. So first item is to adopt a resolution for street vacation, sufficiency of petition, and setting a public hearing. And Paul, if you want to fill us in on this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Lisa Paxton owns the property located at 623 Ethel Street in Brainerd. And there's a platted street right-of-way that is to her west. That is not a constructed street. It actually abuts the CLC property on the south. And it's a street right-of-way that at some point when West Brainerd was platted, that the original intent of that was to build a street. But as you can see from the way the development kind of occurred and how CLC bought that property and put their fields and stuff in there, that there's not really an opportunity in the future to expand Southwest 7th down south further. And so what Mrs. Paxton is proposing is that the city council vacate the portion of Southwest 7th Street from the south right-of-way line of Ethel Street to the CLC property. So what she has done is she has submitted a petition, and the petition has 100% of the adjacent property owners' signatures, which means that we, as a committee and at a council, we accept this petition. It's a statutory process that we accept the petition as complete, and that we set a public hearing for the 30 days from now, basically at the first meeting in September, in which we would hear testimony for or against the proposed street vacation. My thoughts are that you're probably not going to have anyone come because she's got 100% of the signatures anyways. And so what this resolution does is it basically takes the petition that she submitted in for that street vacation, that parcel, it accepts it into the public record, and it officially sets a public hearing in which then we as staff send out notices to properties within 300 feet of this area about the public hearing. They can come and state their case if they don't want it to happen. And then the city council has a decision whether to vacate the street or not by resolution. That would then go to Crow Wing County Recorder's Office. The street, that area in red, would become private property, and it would be split half to Mrs. Paxton's parcel and half to the westerly parcel, that little triangle in your packet. So that's what's in front of you tonight. I can answer any questions about the process or about this vacation in general, or...
Yeah, so I'm looking at the map. The parcel just to what would be the northwest of that, and then there's an area where it's obviously left open for Ethel Street to continue, and that would basically fall under the same category. Is there any way to just kind of split up that land that's never going to be used for anything between private property owners?
Well, so we would wait for an actual petition to vacate Ethel Street. So we would wait for those two property owners. If they were serious about wanting to vacate that, they would submit their own petition for that street vacation. So she's only asking about this one that she's adjacent to.
So there's been no discussion on that other side?
We haven't received any notice from anyone that they want that vacated.
Okay.
Force them to take it.
Well, I mean, you get it back on the
initiate-
tax. You get it back on the tax roll,
Yep.
and then they can use it for something. And
Yep. So these are everywhere in town. This isn't the only situation where we have a right of way that just ends.
yeah,
So there's a lot of them.
Okay.
And there's also alleys that were never created. You know,
Right.
they're platted, but they're never improved. So, I mean, this isn't the only situation, and we usually wait for someone to bring it forward to us to vacate. We don't, the council can on its own motion start a vacation process if they so choose, but that hasn't been our practice in the past.
well, take it as it comes, I guess. So I have no problem with it.
I have a motion when you're ready.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the adoption of the attached resolution, which declares the petition to vacate a portion of Southwest 7th sufficient and sets the public hearing for September 7th, 2021 during the regular scheduled city council meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. The second item is a event application for Brainerd Homecoming Run. So Paul, go ahead and fill us in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is an event submitted by ISD 181 for their homecoming run. It's a 5K and 10K that they do annually. Of course, they did not do it last year, but previous to that, it was an annual event. It basically utilizes, starts in Kiwanis Park, utilizes the Boom Lake Trail, goes up College Drive to 5th Street in front of the high school, and then goes down 5th and utilizes Laurel, East River Road, and County Road 48. So there's two different loops. Basically, the 10K utilizes a different route than the 5K. They're on the same route for a while, but then the 10K goes off on a different path. But that's generally the basic route is 5th, Laurel, East River Road, County Road 48, back down College Drive on most of our trails. They just asked that they can utilize the restrooms at Kiwanis Park, and we're going to have them fill out a park use application. And they usually are really good about supplying volunteers for crossing traffic. So they have volunteer runners that have yellow safety vests on. The runners are instructed to yield to traffic and then cross with a runner that has a vest on. And so they've been good about coordinating that effort with law enforcement in the past. And so really we're only recommending that the applicant continue that coordination and that park use form get filled out. And we're working with them on that.
All right. How many runners do they usually get?
I think it's a couple hundred generally. Yeah. It's a
Decent size
larger
event.
run. Yeah.
Okay.
We have a couple 5Ks in town, and they generally are the turkey run's another one during Thanksgiving and things. And they generally get a lot of people because we have a pretty good trail system for it. So.
All right.
That's good. Move to recommend approval of the attached event application. Under the conditions, the applicant continue to coordinate with the appropriate law enforcement staff, and that the applicant fill out the park use form so that it can be scheduled
And I
accordingly.
second. And I second, after the accordingly.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 3, another event application for the Tour of Lakes. And Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one is for another annual event that's been taking place more recently. In the morning of September 11th, they'll take off from downtown. The applicant asks that the Laurel Street lot be closed. They'll take off from the Laurel lot and do the big routes that you see attached in your packet. There's 2 maps, one for more leisure riders and one for more, the heavy, mileage type riders.
Competition, guys.
Yep. And so basically all they request is that we close the Laurel Street lot for the day. And we would probably do that on Friday because a lot of the bar crowd parks in that Laurel lot overnight. And they need to utilize that for registration in the morning. And then they come back and they have their finalizing activities. They have some food and drinks served by Sage inside the building there. And they just, so that everyone can congregate back in one location in the parking lot there and kind of finalize the day out, give out awards or whatever if they have them and that kind of thing. So really they're just asking for the closure of the lot. They've indicated that power, garbage, any other needs that they have are just supplied by Sage on Laurel. It's actually submitted by Ed Shaw. He's a part of the Paul Bunyan Cyclists. So.
Okay. Any other events going on in that lot?
Not that I saw for that day.
I mean, as far as entertainment or anything like that, are they having music or?
They have, I think, music after the event. Yeah,
Okay.
they'll have a musician out there.
Okay.
Have a motion if you're ready.
Go ahead.
Move to approve the attached application under the condition that the applicant requests traffic control 1 week prior to the event.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we have our additional item, which is a change order 2 to 19-01 street project. Paul, if you want to fill us in on that one too?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is what I kind of call a cleanup change order. Once most of the time when projects kind of wrap up, we have a multitude of items at the end of a project that just need to get cleaned up with the contractor. You can see in the descriptions that are in front of you, the description of this change order is a lengthy one. We had the street signs that were proposed in the plan. We wanted to match the ones we have on College Drive, and so we ended up revising those and making them bigger. And so that was one portion of it. The contractor was requested to install 2 inches of insulation over an existing water main at a storm sewer crossing, where we had a new storm sewer that got put in. The existing plan did not have concrete collars poured around our existing structures, so when we tear up a roadway, we usually put new castings on the structures, the metal parts that go on top of the structures. And then a lot of cities don't do the concrete collars, but we like doing that because it provides an external seal. There's usually the structure top, and then there's a few rings, concrete rings that go on top, and then there's the casting, and that just kind of encases all of that. And so we requested the contractor do that per our standard. The major part of this is the extended hours that they worked on the signal revision. The original plan had the contractor working under traffic conditions to revise the signal at 4th and Washington Street. The electrical contractor, Holden Electric, when we had a weekly meeting, advised us that the operations that they needed to perform wouldn't be able to be under traffic. And so we were looking for a way to have them perform under a closure under the least amount of time. And so it's what we asked of the contractors. They work extended hours during the day, so basically sun up to sundown to try to limit the closure at 210 and 4th Street. They ended up getting it done in about 3 days when the work was anticipated to be about a week. And so we gained quite a bit of time by them working extra hours, which we found to be in our benefit. So really that portion of it is for paying the contractor for the overtime that they had for their employees, and also to pay for the detour that we needed to get traffic around that intersection while they were closing off that leg of 4th. So that's, there's a couple of additional castings that we had, and then when they paved the second lift on the roundabout, the tack that the trucks drag out over the striping got a little bit messed up with the black sticky tack, and so we just had them touch that up.
Okay.
So that's kind of a hodgepodge of things. All the invoices that were run through the engineer were attached. Total increase of costs per that change order is just north of $15,000. That is all able to be paid from our state aid account or the grant funding that we got of $1 million. So
Good. I'm just curious, revised 4th Street detour, we're paying $3,300 for what?
that's when they had to do the signal, the modifications to the mast arms, and they were out over traffic. We had to close 4th Street off and then detour them down a different route. And so all the signage, the drums that were out on 210 for a while, so we detoured traffic to South 6th Street and back over to 4th. And then the other direction, we detoured them down to like Baxter Drive and back around. And so that wasn't part of the original detour plan.
Okay.
So we were detouring 210, basically.
Yeah. It's $3,300 for
Traffic control.
for putting up signs.
Yeah, and there's usually a subcontractor involved, like Anderson Brothers doesn't have their own traffic control. So
Yeah.
anytime we have large traffic control projects, like even our southeast Brainerd, that's a separate company bringing in all that traffic control and setting it up on
Okay,
behalf
so
of
it's
Anderson.
contracted.
Question?
Go ahead.
How long were those additional cones and barrels up?
It was 3 days, I think the total closure was.
So 3 days probably subbing out, like basically renting those.
Yeah, you're renting and you're
Things for-
paying for the setup costs. So they go set them out, they pound the street signs into the right of way and do all that.
So really a lot of this, besides the change with the sign, basically the top 3 things, a lot of this was due to the whole delay.
The signal revision, yep,
Okay.
yep.
All right.
Well, I'll move to approve the change order, number 2, in the amount of $15,025.73. Do you need me to list out,
No,
as presented in
Yep.
the memo?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now our final item is a presentation on safe routes to school by Paul Sandy.
all right. So I just wanted to, we've been going through a process with MnDOT and the school district. So this kind of all started back in, and I kind of outline it in my agenda request, but in 2014, we contracted with SEH, who's a consulting engineering firm, and we created our original Safe Routes to School plan. And that was mostly for improvements right around Garfield School related to sidewalk infrastructure. From that study, we were able to do what we consider Garfield Safe Routes to School Phase 1, 2, and 3. So the first phase in 2014 was for the sidewalks right around the school and the bump outs and things you see around Garfield. The second phase and third phase were combined into a project in 2019 that we did. Basically, we took off from the sidewalks that we constructed right around Garfield, and we went in all directions, north and south, east and west, to cover that section of Northeast. That was basically, that plan was exhausted of all the improvements in it. And so back in 2019, being that that study was kind of done and all the improvements were put into it, MnDOT had a grant to have cities work with Region 5 and MnDOT to create a new Safe Routes to School plan for the community, which you can see attached in the packet. And so that basically identifies areas where the city and school district could improve pedestrian routes for students, improve activity that students do, basically in the 6 E's, they call it, education, enforcement, engineering. So there's this framework that Safe Routes to School works under, and if you have a plan in place, it allows you to apply for funds under that plan. And so we got this plan paid for by MnDOT and with the help of Region 5. And Tad, you're a part of this directly, so Tad had a very big part in creating this plan. Once we had the plan in place,
Right so far, Ted?
He is.
Okay.
yep.
Okay.
Once we have this plan in place, MnDOT opened a second round of funding for an engineering study. And so back in 2020, I came before the city council and I said, hey, we'd like to apply for this engineering study. It basically takes our Safe Routes to School plan. It looks at areas where we can improve safety around a few schools. And it actually goes into detail, looks at potential improvements around those schools and puts costs to them, and looks at the engineering. It studies the traffic and the crashes and the near misses and all that kind of stuff, and looks at improvements around each school, and they put costs to it. So is what this engineering study is it allows staff now access to the Safe Routes to School funding pool, and it's basically a plug and play. So we have a Safe Routes to School plan, which is one of the requirements of applying for the funding. We have this engineering study, which typically on any other Safe Routes to School application, we would be doing as staff. MnDOT funded this on behalf of the cities to be able to open up this opportunity for cities like Brainerd. I think they awarded, 20 to 25 cities and school districts. But anyways, we went through this process to create this engineering study. And so if you had any time to actually dive into it, the 3 focus schools that we focused on were Lowell, Harrison, and Riverside. We put a lot of time and effort into Garfield already, so as staff and the city council discussed, we thought that focusing on our other 3 large elementary schools would be prudent, since the whole first study was focused around Garfield. We did a bunch of improvements over there to improve accessibility and sidewalk access. We thought it was better to look at these 3 specific locations. In the plan, if you kind of scroll through it, the table of contents really gets to what is in here. And what I'll get to at the end is the proposed, some proposed alternatives for safety improvements around each school. So this whole study goes through, so it goes through the existing conditions around each school. They go and they do counts of students that are walking at each school. They do surveys that the kids can take home. Why don't you allow your kids to walk to school? What are the things that are preventing it? That kind of thing. And then that information is taken and looked at with the traffic perspective. So Obviously, at Harrison School, you have Oak Street, which is a very busy road, and then you have H Street at Lowell, that's another busy road. Riverside is kind of a very special animal because it has a major highway on one side and it has 4th Street on the other side, both very busy. So what this whole study goes to is you look at existing conditions, you look at traffic, you look at crash data, and then they start throwing alternatives for safety improvements. And what really came out of the alternative evaluation was, well, first at Harrison, it was improving Oak Street to have some improved pedestrian crossings. So much like you see around Garfield, we would have some median bump outs so that you can get closer to your crossing destination. It has some planned RFRBs, which are the push button flashing signs that allow for helpful safe crossings. And there's a couple alternatives they have. They have one with a center median included. They have one without a center median included. They have some with just signing improvements. They have some with RFRBs. So it kind of gives you a wide array of alternatives that you could apply for safe routes to school funding. H Street and Lowell is very similar to what is being proposed at Harrison, and that includes the bump outs, the medians, the RFRBs, that kind of stuff, and it also has associated costs with that. So really is what I'm trying to get at is this engineering study, when you have a chance to look at it, will allow staff to basically take this information from this study and plug it directly into a Safe Routes to School funding application, in which is federal funds, but it's basically 80% of the project costs, 20% local.
So, in looking at the, all the remodeling
Yep.
that's been done, you know, some of these things have changed. Are we gonna have to redo some of this in order to keep it?
No, so we were actually working directly with the school district during this process, and if you actually look at the figures in the appendices, they have the new layouts of the schools laid on top. And so all the new improvements that were done at Harrison and Lowell have the street improvements and the new layouts of the school incorporated into this plan. Because we knew they were coming, we worked directly with Reed Thesey at the school district. He was in on every one of our meetings. And we made sure that the school district was on board with these improvements too, because obviously they put millions of dollars into the schools. We wanted to make sure this aligns with what their vision is. And really what came out of this study are the major barriers to Harrison is Oak Street for walking and biking. The major barriers to Lowell is H Street for walking and biking. And the major barriers at Riverside are, there's not a lot of improvements you could do to those, and so it was just some additional signing, because 210 is obviously, they have what they call hazard busing at Riverside. They don't have many walkers, if any, at Riverside because of the where it's located. And so really, there's just a few signing improvements on the Riverside alternatives, but really the outcome of this was big improvements at Harrison on Oak Street and big improvements at Lowell on H Street, that they have cost estimates and things that we can directly apply. And there will be a solicitation coming out, I think, sometime this fall for Safe Routes to School funding. And my intent would be to take this study, pick out some improvements that we can talk about as a group and apply for them, which I think will be very competitive because it's it's one of the largest solicitations MnDOT's ever had for Safe Routes to School. And so I think we'll be very competitive, as we have been in the past. We've gotten, I think, $1.5 million of improvements funded through Safe Routes to School in the past 6 years. So we want to continue utilizing the program, and it's been beneficial. And now that we have this study, it makes it really easy for us as staff. We spent a lot of time putting it together, but getting out of it and having something that's plug and play is going to be really nice.
Well, I'll just add, really good summary. Like you said, Region 5 played a role in developing the plan. But what's really good about this engineering thing, from my perspective, is that, we pulled together a group of community members as a steering committee to put this plan together. But now this list of projects hasn't been vetted by an engineer. So this process, these projects are all good, but now this engineering piece gives that second layer of more of a technical analysis to these projects.
Yep. And it makes it that much more competitive. A lot of times when Safe Routes grants are submitted, a lot of the technical stuff isn't really vetted in detail. I mean, if an engineer's putting it together, it's vetted to a certain degree, but not to this level where they're actually putting together drawings, concepts of the improvements, and actually pricing them out.
Up to this point, in putting this plan together, there was a lot of community engagement. So you mentioned there was the parent surveys that were done. There was a walkout that was done, and then an in-class student tallies, kind of the three.
I remember all those.
Yeah, you.
I was on Region 5 at the time, and
So it really identifies from the parent's perspective to what the barriers are, which is really helpful.
The
Let me see what that is. What page is that on, Sean? No, I think that's just the school district area. That's the area of the school district. What area they serve. Yeah, the safe route solicitation is statewide. Yep,
Okay.
so you're competing with the whole state for, I think it's gonna be between $2 and $3 million.
and these projects roughly.
It really
like, you
depends
apply
on
for
what we
one
select.
school at a time, I'm assuming, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, we'd be much more competitive, in my opinion, kind of picking one school at a time, because if you kind of combine these all into one, it's going to be a large grant ask, and I think it'll be pretty competitive. So I think if we, pick the improvements that we want to see at Harrison or Lowell and run with one app 1 year, and then maybe a year or two down the road, I'll look at another one, because these also, Safe Routes to School funds, I think 5 years in the future. So you're applying in 22, you're going to see funding in 27.
Okay. Was this Forest View Middle School part of this study?
Forest View Middle School, Brainerd applied for the engineering grant side of this for only our schools. Forest View was a part of the Safe Routes to School plan that was created back in 2019.
Okay.
So that encompassed the whole district.
Yep.
Of elementary schools. The actual engineering study, Brainerd selected to pursue 3 schools out of the plan and come up with alternatives and look at them. So Forest View was not a part of the engineering study, but it was part of the
That's all I wanted to know.
Safe Routes to School plan.
They're all grown up over there. They can do that themselves.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you're looking for any action on this or just kind of.
No, I just wanted to get it in front of you guys so you can start looking at it, start thinking about that, because in a month or so, and maybe this is the letter of intent out even right now, Tad?
No.
It's coming though.
Safe routes.
Yeah.
The next round of project solicitations, no, it would be October.
So just start thinking about looking at these alternatives, what designs you'd like to see, because we'll be bringing a request to apply for a grant forward to you 3, and getting some recommendations on what you guys would like to see out of this study implemented.
Are there
At
any in
which
the study that stand out as being more dangerous than the rest?
I think definitely Harrison is an area that since we have improvements going on over there right now with sidewalks being extended up 15th and 16th, that would be a prime location to look at finishing that crossing on Oak Street, which would include the bump outs to get the crossing shorter, the RFRBs, that kind of thing, kind of completing that, because with 15th and 16th going on this year, it makes sense to try to get that finished up. We don't have projects planned out over by Lowell for a while.
Okay.
And I think that would just make the most sense. And doing the whole thing to me makes sense, doing the bump outs, doing a median down the middle of the roadway, kind of making that more of a terrace type of road through there, kind of like what they're planning to do in front of the high school
Right.
with a grass median. I think that would be a huge improvement in front of Harrison.
Yeah, I like it.
One last comment too, just from just having seen several of those applications, I think you're right, I think it'd be very competitive. What MnDOT's looking for with the Safe Routes projects is how many, obviously, Safe Routes, how many additional students can they get to be walking and biking? And by making that corridor safer, you essentially open up the entire southeast, residential area more accessible. So that would be a huge potential number of additional students walking and biking. That's what they're looking for.
All right.
So we had no action tonight, just more of an FYI.
Yeah.
that this was done. It was free, which is awesome. MnDOT participated 100% in both our plan and our engineering study, which is great and they do it for a lot of communities. So it's very beneficial for us to have this and be able to have that funding opened up.
Well, one last thing I'll mention really quick is the past projects that we've been funded, 20% match, and then that would be the same for the
Yep.
future ones too. So the projects are, there's a little bit of match for.
Yep, the projects are, 80% federal funds and 20% match, and then we have to pay for engineering.
As they always have been.
Yep.
Do we have any renderings of changes?
Yeah, they're in there. They're in that plan. So if you
Okay.
scroll through, I think they're in the appendices. If you look at page, let me find it here.
I see a lot of text.
I would say
Where's the other
page
document?
90 through, so 90 is Harrison with the bump outs. There's one with a bump out with a short median. There's one with, so 93 has a long median. So yeah, those are the actual drawings. So Sean, go to the actual, you're not in the right one, Sean, sorry.
I think I'm on the same one that Sean's on here.
That's the Safe Routes to School plan. You don't have the engineering study. I sent out the engineering study to all of you
Okay.
because it was too large of a file to put in the packet. It's like 90, 100 pages long. So I put the plan in the packet, not the study.
Got it.
So in your email.
Is that from today? No.
No, it was last week, I think Thursday.
Okay. I will get into it. Okay.
But yeah, there's drawings of all the improvements.
Yeah. Freehand. All right. So I think, thanks for the info on that. That's an interesting one. But I think we're just looking to adjourn now. So,
Second.
motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Sean, you guys can go ahead. You can turn my screen on. I have the plan up.
What?
Can't wait to